Welcome to our basic training on human rights. This training will be part of a series over time in which we train all our employees on human rights in the workplace. By the end of this course, you will be able to explain what human rights are and why it is important to protect them, know what your rights are as an employee, get insights into how you can raise your voice if rights are not upheld.
So what do we mean when we refer to human rights? The idea of human rights is as simple as it is powerful. Every person around the world has a right to live a life of dignity and to be treated equally. In 1948, the United Nations General Assembly officially adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which defines human rights as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations.
Some examples of those rights include the right to life, the right to freedom of expression, and the right to equality and non-discrimination.
Then, why should businesses pay attention to human rights?
So why should businesses care? With growing businesses' impact on human rights, the international organizations, including the United Nations, have established international standards to prevent negative impact on human rights in the private sector. They all outline the importance for companies to conduct their business responsibly with respect to human rights. International standards alone were not enough to prevent negative impacts by companies. Voluntary standards developed and recommended by the UN and other international organizations providing guidance on how to respect human rights and address violations did nevertheless result in continuous violations of human rights by businesses. There is a limit to those international standards because they are not legally binding and are just at the level of voluntary recommendations. Hence, Western countries such as the US and EU began shifting those voluntary international standards to mandatory legislations, legally requiring businesses to consider human rights in their business operations, and wider value chains and provide access to remedy for the victims. There are compelling reasons for businesses to case about human rights despite stakeholder expectations, legislations, and benchmarks and costly risks if human rights are not adhered to. Then, what happens if companies fail to fulfill their duty to respect human rights? Risks to people when human rights are violated become risks to businesses over time. Failing to meet expectations can play out in reputational harm and loss to stakeholder trust as a consequence of public scrutiny by the media, consumer boycotts, and impact on sales. Ultimately, poor human rights management can lead to employee strikes, termination or cancellation of investments and business relations, litigations, resulting in financial losses, external audits, and weaker business performance. When businesses do, however, fulfill their duty to respect human rights across all their business operations and beyond, they not only promote their business performance by enhancing internal and external stakeholder trust, positive brand image, and employee loyalty and satisfaction leading to higher retention rates, but also attract more public tenders, investments, and consumption, thereby improving the overall market competitiveness and profitability. Now, what are the workers' rights we must safeguard at work? As we've learned earlier, the human rights we must protect at work are labor rights. These labor rights, as defined by international human rights standards, must be respected and protected by the companies and should be considered a top priority. And this includes your rights as an employee. Now then, what roles should the company and employees play to respect human rights?
This starts with the basic principle that everyone has the right to be free from discrimination. Therefore, we prohibit discrimination based on age, disability, ethnicity, race, gender, or any other status protected by applicable local laws. For instance, it is prohibited to pay women less than men workers for the same job. Employees also have the right to a workplace that is free from violence and harassment, including verbal and physical abuses of any kind, threatening behavior, bullying, and intimidation. Especially, the behavior towards subordinates exploiting a position of power is especially harmful and won't be tolerated.
Moreover, employees have the right to rest and leisure, which means that the company cannot force or push employees to work overtime or threaten reprisal for those who choose not to work overtime or use any other means to create disadvantage for workers who choose not to perform overtime.
We respect working hours, breaks, and paid time-offs based on the ILO standards. This generally indicates that employees are required to work 8 hours a day with breaks and should have 1 day off per 7 days. If there is a discrepancy or inconsistency between a national standard and the ILO's standard, the one with more protective regulation shall prevail. Forced labor is defined as all work or service which is exacted from any person under the menace of any penalty and for which the said person has not offered himself voluntarily. This includes to push an employee for excessive overtime or threaten consequences if a worker denies to work longer hours than the legal limit.
Moreover, employees have the right to join or not to join a union of their own choosing. And the company must build and maintain healthy labor management relations based on mutual trust and make sure not to discriminate against any employees for organizing or joining a union. Now let's learn about what actions you can take when your rights are not upheld. All workers have the right to access remedy when their rights are violated. It is one of the most fundamental rights of individuals. The UN Declaration of Human Rights and the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights specify the principle of grievance resolution and access to remedy. The UN Guiding Principles defines what it means when access to remedy is effective. This includes that grievance reports can be filed anonymously, should not lead to retaliation. The process should be understood by the complainant and can be filed without difficulty, and should keep the complainant informed about the process. In addition, the complainant should be involved in the grievance resolution process. The process must be transparent, and the final resolution must be satisfactory to the complainant. Based on these international standards, Samsung is operating different grievance reporting channels, considering the characteristics of the work sites to effectively address the grievances. Moreover, we receive grievances not only from our employees, but also from diverse external stakeholders and make the information about our grievance reporting channels publicly available in our yearly sustainability report. Furthermore, we have put grievance reception and redressal processes and criteria in place to support our employees with immediate responses to filed cases. These processes allow not only protection of the victim and remediation of the violated rights, but also early detection and prevention of possible escalation of the negative impacts on our business. In addition, we analyze recurring issues, change work procedures where needed, and provide employee trainings to increase awareness and prevent reoccurrences. At Samsung Electronics, employees' rights are profoundly important, and we believe everyone's rights should be respected. Therefore, we encourage you to observe the following 3 recommendations. 1. Pay attention to our company's human rights policies and processes. Actively engage in our regular human rights training, and make sure to visit the Labor and Human Rights page on our official website to make yourself familiar with your own rights Samsung commits to. 2. Make sure you fully understand your rights and contact our corporate HR team if you have any questions. 3. Protect and respect the rights of your colleagues to help create an environment where also your rights can be protected. Human rights respect begins with respecting each other's rights between colleagues. If your rights are violated, try to address the issue directly with the person, or report the violation through our grievance resolution channel. It's you who can actively contribute to advance our company's effort to respect the human rights of all people by leading by example.